And then on what is called universal background checks. Very popular idea when you say it at the three-word title, but not effective when you look into how it would operate. The National Institute of Justice said there is no way this can be enforced unless we have universal gun registration. Well, we know how universal gun registration works because our neighbor Canada tried it. They enacted it. It cost literally 100 times more than the promise was made about the expenses of it. It was a complete fiasco. There was massive disobedience by the Canadians, who tend to be a lot more obedient to government than Americans. And it was such a disaster that it was repealed, having been enacted in the mid-1990s. It was repealed last year by Canada's Parliament. Now, how about the universal background check, so-called bill, that passed Colorado, the Colorado State House on Monday? Well, people think they like it because they say, well, yeah, some guy meets somebody else via Craigslist and then they sell the gun and it's a transaction between complete strangers. Should there be a background check on that? A lot of people say yes. But this bill is far, far, far more than that. It is an instrument for the destruction of the lawful ownership and use of firearms. Let me give you some examples. The only ways, there are very limited exceptions about when a person can give not sell, but just temporarily hand over for a few minutes a gun to another person. One is if you're at a target shooting range. That's fine. Another is if you're actually out in the field while hunting. You can do that. But let me tell you some times when you can't. I'm an NRA certified firearms instructor for the handgun course and for personal protection in the home. To follow the NRA curriculum, and the NRA is besides being America's oldest civil rights organization, is also America's oldest gun safety organization, founded in 1871. If I'm going to follow that high-level NRA curriculum for how to teach people about safe gun handling, one of the things we do is in the classroom, not at the target range, but in one of the early parts of the instruction, in the classroom, I'll bring in some guns. Absolutely no ammunition allowed in the classroom, not even my own. I bring in some firearms, and then I can bring in some dummy ammunition, some inert plastic in the shape of rounds of ammunition. And under my supervision, the students practice loading and unloading the guns, pulling the trigger, and those kinds of things, getting that basic safe operation of the gun before you ever go out to a target range with live ammunition. Under the bill that passed the Colorado legislature, under the bill written by Michael Bloomberg, that's a crime. Every time I do that, when I take one of my guns and hand it to a student without having put that student through a background check, that's a crime punishable by up to 18 months in jail in Colorado. And then when the student wants to hand it back to me, we have to do another background check on me to get it back. And both ways on that transaction, it costs $20. And that applies to every single transaction, temporary transfer of a firearm during a safety class. There are exceptions, supposedly, for people, and by the way, in Colorado, where the check is done by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, it's not an instant check. That's the law the legislature enacted, but the Colorado Bureau of Investigation is flagrantly violating that. Delays of hours have been standard for years. The delay now is approximately 3 days or more, and has sometimes been illegally up to 9 days. And under conditions like that, you can't possibly run a gun safety class properly. There's another exception in the bill. So what if somebody needs a gun in an emergency? Can they borrow it from somebody? Well, not really. The only conditions under which you can temporarily give someone else custody of a firearm for self-defense is, first of all, it has to be within the home of the person who's receiving it. So you can't go, the victim, potential victim, can't go to a neighbor's house and pick up the gun there. But more importantly, the standard for when it can be transferred is the same standard as when it's legal to shoot someone in self-defense. When you are in imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury. So what does that mean in practice? A woman has a guy who's stalking her and keeps calling her on the phone and threatening her. And she goes to a friend and says, "Can I borrow a gun for a few days till I can buy my own?" Because it takes 3 days to buy one in Colorado or more but I don't know when this guy's going to come over. It's Saturday night. Maybe he'll come over tonight. Maybe he won't come over. Maybe he'll come over on Sunday morning. Who knows? Well, under Colorado law, sensibly, if she happened to see that person on the street somewhere, she couldn't just shoot him, because even though he's made these threats, he hasn't actually initiated an attack. So because the threat has not risen to the level at which she would be justified in pulling the trigger, she is, by the law which the Colorado House of Representatives passed and which Michael Bloomberg's lobby wrote, she is prohibited from obtaining a gun for her protection. And you say, well, why don't you just go to a store and buy a gun? Well, maybe there's no gun store open on Saturday night, and in Colorado, it takes you 3 days for the instant background check to clear at best, by which time she can be dead. Of course, the bill also has a war on Christmas. It's illegal under this bill for your father-in-law to give you a present, a gun as a present for Christmas. It's illegal for you to loan your gun to your sister. You can sell your gun to your sister, but you can't loan it to her. And it's illegal for a guy who's on his deathbed to have his friends come around and give his various guns to them. You can do it. After he dies, he can do it. The gun can pass by the execution of his estate, but no transfers are allowed when he's alive, and he can actually see the friend while he's handing him the firearm. These aren't bugs in the law. These are features. Michael Bloomberg is not someone. There are many people, including me, who believe you can have strong gun rights and reasonable gun controls. Michael Bloomberg isn't in that category. He is a prohibitionist. He brags about how little gun ownership there is in New York City. He wouldn't even let the National Guard come into the city to restore order against the looters in South Brooklyn after Hurricane Sandy, because they would be carrying guns. He is a true anti-gun extremist. Another bill is this fee for background checks, which results in $20 per transfer. And maybe that's not a big deal for someone who's buying a $400 gun in a store. But when you expand when this is required, so that when somebody's teaching people at Boy Scout camp how to use firearms and hands a gun to the Boy Scout, or in my safety classes, or the woman who needs a gun in a hurry, it does become a serious burden. Notably, we have so many things for which fees can be charged, filing an appeal in a civil case and many, many other things. But we also routinely exempt from those fees people for whom they would be a genuine hardship. Someone who isn't buying a $700 gun, but might be buying a $110 gun at a pawn shop with a background check, because that's all she can afford. The majority in the House voted down something to say, for people below the poverty line, however you want to define that, whether you're on food stamps or Medicaid eligible or whatever, to exempt those people from this poll tax on their perhaps temporary acquisition of a firearm. And then, of course, there's the ban where the current House undoes what the Colorado House did in 2003, which is enact a strong law about the right of licensed people who pass a 10-point fingerprint-based background check, pay fees of over $100, and pass a safety training class to carry firearms in public places and on public property throughout the state. The bill to outlaw licensed carry on all college campuses was promoted by people such as Representative Joe Salazar, who made remarks saying, well, people talk about resisting rape. Well, how do you know? Maybe you might make a mistake. Maybe the guy you think is trying to rape you really isn't, and then you go pop, 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 and you shoot him. I don't know, maybe when somebody puts his hands around your neck and starts strangling you, maybe he's there just to announce the delivery of flowers from an anonymous admirer. But this is the view This is the view of the majority of the Democratic caucus in the Colorado House, that people are in general, including women, adult women on college campuses, are too incompetent to be able to use firearms responsibly for self-defense. And there was one notable amendment to this bill that was defeated, and that was to say, okay, you want to outlaw, in effect, self-defense on college campuses? Let's just do a study. Let's just have the state government collect the data and report on whether or not victimization, rape, robbery, assaults, homicides increases on college campuses in Colorado after this enacted. And that, of course, that amendment was defeated as well. Representative Claire Levy, the sponsor of the campus gun ban, said, well, no, we shouldn't do that because there might be an aberration which would distort the data. I'll tell you what the aberration is: Virginia Tech. And this bill makes Colorado campuses a safe zone for mass murderers and for more ordinary violent criminal predators. And they don't want, the sponsors of this don't want the public to see the data and to see the dangers that are going to result from outlawing self-defense on campuses. Thank you very much.